Usually when we have a hearing about fish, we're considering the economic and environmental aspects of taking fish out of the ocean. Today we are here to talk about the economic and environmental impacts of adding a completely new type of fish that was created in a laboratory into our oceans. As I speak, the Food and Drug Administration is considering a landmark decision, whether to allow the first genetically engineered animal to be produced and sold for human consumption. This animal has been created in a lab by mixing the genes from 3 separate fish species. The result is a genetically engineered Atlantic salmon that is said to grow much faster than the regular Atlantic salmon. The company calls the lab-created fish aquatic salmon. Others have given the nickname Frankenfish. Whatever you call it, when we are talking about this genetically engineered fish, we are talking about the entire future wild fish and fisheries. The stakes are high. If these fish were to get out into the wild, they could wreak untold havoc on our marine and freshwater ecosystems. Although the company that has created the fish says that they have taken the precautions to make sure that fish don't escape, the prudent and responsible approach for us to take here is to assume that fish will escape. We have plenty of examples where non-native fish have escaped into the wild and wreaked environmental havoc. Look at the huge economic and environmental impacts from the uncontrolled spread of the Asian carp in the Great Lakes region. We have been trying to contain the spread of these fish for over a decade with little success. The lesson that we should take from this and other examples is that non-native fish can and will get out in the wild, and once they are out, they are impossible to contain. Now think about genetically engineered fish that have only existed in labs and have never existed in the wild. As you can imagine, it's very difficult to assess the environmental impacts from fish that have never existed before now. And the FDA is now asked to carry out an impossible task of trying to assess the food safety and environmental impacts of genetically engineered fish. We'll leave it to the Food and Drug Administration to assess the food safety aspects, but I'm not convinced that this agency has the scientific expertise to adequately assess the environmental aspects. Looking at the available scientific information, it is clear that there is no guarantee that these GE fish, genetically engineered fish, won't ever escape into the wild. And there is an alarming degree of scientific uncertainty about the environmental risk of these fish if they do escape. I feel that America's wild salmon stock and aquatic ecosystems are too important to allow them to be guinea pigs in what will amount to basically a huge experiment with GE fish in our waters. That is why I've introduced Senate Bill 1717, the Prevention of the Escapement of Genetically Altered Salmon in the United States Act, which will prohibit the sale of Frankenfish within the United States. This prohibition will still allow research and development of genetically engineered fish for purposes such as medical research. My bill seeks to prevent the release of GE salmon and other marine fish into the wild until we have enough scientific evidence to show that the GE fish can be produced without risk to our nation's wild fish stocks and aquatic environments. By introducing this bill, I'm simply asking for more time, more science to be done before we make a decision that could have such enormous impacts to the environment. We have convened a panel of experts here today that we can have a clear-eyed discussion of the environmental risk of escapement of genetically engineered fish. I would also like to hear some ideas on how we can strengthen the federal approval process so that all of the necessary scientific information is considered when assessing